We're 8 minutes into hour number 2, this third day of November. It's Tuesday edition, 2009. Mike Rivero is our guest for stations that just joined us. The climate treaty has accompanying legislation in every nation of the planet that's signing on to it. And the House and Senate versions openly give 35 federal agencies complete control, dictatorial power, extrajudicial outside the courts to take over all facets of society, including a tax on all children. California is on the verge of passing legislation. Last time I saw it a month ago, it may have passed, to take away the tax credit on children and then to begin taxing having more than one child. Australia, England, Canada, all the globalist nations are going along with this. Europe's going along with it. And now Merkel, the German chancellor, just completed an hour ago a speech before the House calling for the passage. The Senate has marked it up to go to the full Senate. Debate has now begun on this. Mike Rivero, breaking this down from your research, what's in the bill, what it does. The New York Times is admitting what we talked about years ago, that Gore is making billions of dollars off of this, that the UN and others are only going to give the carbon contracts to him and his company, Blood and Gore. Literally, the partner's named Blood in England. No joke there. It's admitted that Obama owns part of the mercantile that's going to be trading this in Chicago. This is where the bankers who've been waging war against the real economy, criminally consolidating it, now will have government power to shut down all their competition. I mean, this is the worst possible nightmare.
Yeah, we've been seeing it for a long time where the Federal Reserve and its affiliated banks use the courts and use the government to go after any possible competing banking systems. We saw what happened to Abraham Lincoln and his greenbacks. We saw what happened to JFK and his Executive Order 11110. This is absolutely the financial enslavement of the human race if we continue to believe in their system of money. One of the things that really alarms me greatly about this global empire, it's got to have a single financial banking system. And, of course, we all know that the Western-style bankers are absolutely loathing the Muslims because they have a completely different system of banking which doesn't suffer from the crashes and the disparity of income that we see here in the Western world. And so at some point along this path to a global government and a global banking system, there's going to be war between the Western-style compound interest banking and the Islamic system of banking. And this is what they really mean when they talk about a clash of civilizations. Somewhere between now and the success of a global government is a war between Christians and Muslims that they've been trying to generate now for years. Ooh, bad Islam, bad Muslims, we've got to go kill them. You keep hearing that phrase, clash of civilizations. It's a clash of banking systems is what this is all about.
Mike, looking at this, they're now saying, and Feinstein and Boxer that are honchoing this in the Senate, it's passed the House, they don't normally say something's going to pass unless it is. They say health care is going to pass. Mm-hmm. They say the carbon tax is going to pass. All of these are taxes to the banks. Looks like we can try to call Congress, get the buzz going, warn people. A, do you think it's going to pass? And B, as they incrementally try to enforce it, what should our resistance to this be? State sovereignty, states saying they're not going along with it? What should we do?
Well, definitely we have to resist it by any means possible. I mean, going back for an entire year, we've seen that Congress absolutely is not concerned with the will of the people. They passed the TARP and the bailout despite 90% phone calls to the Congress saying, no, do not give our money to Congress. Now Obama's talking about a second stimulus, even as the first one fails to accomplish anything. It is very clearly the government has been co-opted. The government of the United States is co-opted into this globalist agenda. They're taking all the wealth away from the common people to concentrate it at the top, from which they will use it to dictate how the world is going to run. Now, we already know the world is overpopulated. So if we get a global government with a Hitler-type mentality at the top, what is going to happen to those portions of the world's population that are deemed non-essential or non-productive? What is going to happen to them? And before you answer that question, go back and look at National Security Study Memorandum 200 that was official U.S. policy during the Nixon administration, which called for overt and covert methods of birth control to reduce the world's population.
Well, let me expand on that. Yesterday I showed the headlines in Canada, Australia, and England with their environment ministers on the same day 3 months ago saying we must cut our population by half. We must raise taxes on people that have children. That is in the Copenhagen Treaty to make them not have children. That's how it began in 75 in China. Then in 81 it became law. And the headline was in the London Guardian, England must cut population to 30 million. That's by half. There's 60 million. The diabolicalness of this, the diabolical nature, is what I think a lot of people have trouble coming to grips with. And a lot of yuppies think, well, good, get rid of those third world people. They don't understand that the globalist number one group they're targeting is actually Westerners, regardless of color. And we've gotten the internal audio tapes of Planned Parenthood where they're talking about their mission being getting rid of the black people. And we have the documents that came out with Margaret Sanger calling blacks subhuman that had to be killed. But these are modern audio tapes that were all over the news this year and last year. So the issue is they're going after everybody, and they're telling the third world the cap and trade will hurt the greedy Americans and British and Germans and French, selling it to them as a divide and conquer strategy, when really this is an attack against everyone, as the British Commission on Population stated.
Well, what you need to understand is from the point of view of the bankers and the globalists, the people they want to die and leave the planet are those who work the least while consuming the most. The ones who will be kept alive are those willing to work the hardest and expect and demand the least amount in return. The ultimate agenda for any government in history is to extract the most work product from their population for the least amount of support going back. So if you're willing to work 80 hours a week for a loincloth and a bowl of rice, you are much more valuable to the bankers than somebody who works, flex time 25, 30 hours a week and wants to drive a BMW.
You're absolutely right. And let me read a quote from the UN dais, Maurice Strong, 1992, Rio de Janeiro, head of the Earth Summit. Isn't the only hope for the planet that the industrialized civilizations collapse? Isn't it our responsibility to bring that about? Then another quote by key agent of the Rockefeller family, Dr. Richard Day, the national medical director of the Rockefeller-sponsored Planned Parenthood, told a meeting in March of '69 that American industry will be sabotaged and shown to be uncompetitive. He said the stated plan was that different parts of the world would be assigned different roles of industry and commerce in a unified global system. The continued preeminence of the United States and the related independence and self-sufficiency of the United States would have to be changed. In order to create a new structure, you first have to tear down the old, and American industry was one example of that. Each part of the world will have a speciality and thus become interdependent, he said. The U.S. will remain the center for agriculture, high-tech communications, and education, but heavy industry would be transported out. Now, this is all stated thousands of different places in hundreds of different ways, but the issue here is that they're doing all this to make us dependent on government. They are stating this. This is such a criminal hijacking. This is neo-feudalism. This is serfdom. These people are mortal enemies of anyone that wants freedom and liberty. And remember how they throw this in our face through movies, which they now admit they're funding. Rollerball, 1974, where you have the different energy cities. Because once the globalists have a world government, they're even going to break it into sub-regions. And that's their plan. I mean, it is so unbelievably wicked, Mike Rivero.
Yeah, absolutely. It's basically, again, and every time I hear the phrase global government, the first thing I think of is that's what Alexander the Great wanted. That's what Napoleon wanted. That's what the Roman Caesars wanted. That's what Hitler wanted. And in the middle of all this empire building, the ordinary people who just wanted to be left alone to live their lives and raise their children were crushed. There has never been a push for global government that did not involve the complete enslavement of the common people. As you say, this is neo-feudalism. They're trying to end the American Republic, the democracy experiment, and take us back to enforced serfdom. We will be attached to the land, we'll be considered part of the wealth of the land, and there will be titles of nobility to those who control large tracts of land. It's going back to the 12th century politically. And we're already seeing this in our own government that has abandoned the presumption of innocence. You have to prove that you're innocent now, or you wind up being tortured until you confess something. I mean, even the Magna Carta said you're not allowed to do that. And our government has gone back before that in the way that they're handling the prisoners from these wars.
Mike, you're absolutely right. And my film, Fall of the Republic, details how the establishment is carrying this operation out. I don't see this working for the establishment, though. Sure, they can claim they control all issuance of currency and credit. They can try to restrict people's resources to control them. They can try to force one-child policies. But as the public learns about the shadow government, as they learn about the private Federal Reserve, as they learn about the real paradigm, which this oppression will encourage them to do, and is happening now, resistance is going to mount. That's why they preemptively, in their own documents, admitted this is neo-serfdom, feudalism, and that they're bringing in this electronic police state straitjacket. But I don't see that succeeding as well. This is going to be explosive.